Well, guys, it's that time of the year again, as we just wrapped up the 2024 MTWS season, as we get ready for the Runners-Up Cup in January and the championship in February. It's time to look back at the 2024 MTWS season with the stats, the point standings, how the season finished. As, how about this? Shatter won the points championship. It joined Outlaws, the only other truck to win it twice, but became the first truck to win it back-to-back years, as it won it last year as well. And how about Outlaw? Was 15 points off from being it was 15 points away from being the first truck to win the points championship by 3. That is insane how close that was. If it just won racing, or it just made it to the finals in Glendale yesterday, it could have done it. Insane. What an incredible year Shatter had. It had the second best freestyle points, and it had one of the best racing records too in the league. Give it a really strong contender like it was last year to potentially get a title this year. We'll see, especially when it's going to be at home in Baltimore. As Outlaw had another strong year in racing and really high scoring points. Mad Dog once again had a really strong finish earlier this year by winning. I think it won race in Oklahoma City. Had a very strong year. Nitro won race in 2 of the last few events this season. It won race in Cincinnati, and then it won racing yesterday in Detroit. So it had a really big turnaround near the end of the year after struggling early on. Wild Ride, former racing champion, didn't do as well in freestyle, but it had another really good turnaround in racing, as it won a lot of races near the end of the year. In fact, Wild Ride has the most wins of the season in terms of race wins. 28 wins. No one's close to that, which is very impressive. And then the big storyline of the season, Ye Plunderer. What a year it had. What a year it had. It looked like at the beginning of the year in the All-Star Challenge when it made the semifinals, it was just a fluke. Then it made the finals in Inglewood, which was insane. And it just kept dominating all year. It had like 3 or 4 racing wins. It made the finals even more times. It was one of the first trucks to qualify for championship. Just an unbelievable year. But then, of course, the last month, December, it went 2-4, which is kind of concerning for Ye Plunder. Like, it seemed to have lost a lot of its momentum, but to be fair, it did go up against really good trucks during those times, too. But Ye Plunder had, for the longest time, the most wins and the best racing record in the season. And now, it's third in wins, and has the second best win percentage, too. So, we'll see how it does going into the championship. Fireball did not do as well in racing. It actually became a better freestyler. It had like 2 freestyle wins, I think. It was insane how well it did. Impala, same thing. It didn't do as well in racing, but it won a lot of freestyles. But of course, it's an elite freestyle and a former champion, so that's not surprising. Shadowrun. It was horrible in racing, no surprise. 4-13. That might be the worst racing record of any truck that's qualified for a championship, I think. But it sure made up in freestyle, even though it lost the freestyle title last year. It showed up once again, as it won multiple freestyles and scored almost 400 points. I had to look up the previous seasons, but I wouldn't be surprised if Shadowrun scored the most points of everyone in the last 2 years, last 3 seasons. Just an unbelievable year, and Shadowrun's going to be a favorite to win freestyle again. Patriot had a great year, especially near the end of the year when it really turned it around. Blood Rage had a strong start early on in the year, if I remember correctly, but then fell off a bit, but it made here. Out Eruption. Last year, it didn't make the championship because it just could not win any racing. It kept doing horrible. And by and large, it still wasn't very good in racing. But it did just better enough, and more importantly, it did way better in freestyle that made the championship. So, good on Eruption. Power Forward had a terrible year in racing. It went 500, just like Eruption, just struggled. It kept going up against elite racers, too, that kept beating it. But it had good freestyles, and that was enough to save it. Prowler. What we gotta see about Prowler? We all know Prowler is here for one reason and one reason alone. That 2-week stretch in mid-November from Las Vegas and Kansas City, where it went 9-0 in racing. It won free racing back-to-back times against Impala and Thunderbolt. It beat two of the best racers in the league to win 2 races that stretch, and that's why Thunderbolt's here. Impala, Prowler, there we go. Just barely got, not barely got in, but those 2 wins are the reason why it's here today. Take those wins away, it might not be here. That's how close it was. Speaking of another close one, Crusher. Crusher got here with its 2 racing wins as well in Reno and Daytona. And the funny thing is, in both those events it won racing in, it would have swept Reno if it wasn't for Night Stalker stopping it, and it would have doubled down in Daytona if it won for 1 point by that Venom stopped it by. Another really good year, probably the best year Crusher's had probably ever, as it made the championship. Thunderbolt, the former 2-time freestyle champion. Thunderbolt had like one of the best racing records last year. It took a major step back this year, and wasn't really as good in freestyle either. It struggled a lot, but it got here. Crazy Bull, the defending racing champion. I don't think Crazy Bull really won any races this year. I know it made the finals a couple times, but it kept losing a couple times too. I think it won race in Brisbane, but other than that, I can't really think of where other races it won besides the All-Star Challenge, which doesn't count. But it still had a really good racing record, although it didn't do as good in freestyle, but it still made it here despite the massive decline from last year. Crazy, of course, terrible in racing, very good freestyle. At the beginning of the year, it looked like Crazy wasn't going to do as good in freestyle, but it turned around and won so many freestyles. What a great year. Crazy Bull and Crazy by and large, even though Crazy Bull didn't win a lot of races, they both defended their titles pretty well this year. Destroyer had a consistently good freestyle, and that's how it got here, but also having a really successful racing season. Flying Falcon had a terrible racing record for its normality, but really good in freestyle to save it. Outrage, terrible racing record. Very good freestyle record, though, and that's what got into the championship after missing out last year. The Monster Razor. The only reason it's here in the championship is because of Minneapolis. It won the season opener, racing in Minneapolis, and that's why it's here. If you take that out, it wouldn't be here right now. And how about that Polar Storm making the championship on its own for the first time since first time ever, actually. It made the championship in 2020, but that was automatically for everyone. And Polar Storm earned its spot on its own, so good job for it. Even though it didn't win anything, it somehow did just enough to get here. So good job on Polar Storm, as we're going to see in the championship. And then last up, Bling. Just barely got in the last week of the season. Even though I think Bling won freestyle in Houston, its hometown, if I remember correctly. And did it win racing somewhere? I don't remember. Didn't do as well in racing. It didn't score a lot of points, but its consistency was enough to get here. And those are trucks that qualify for the championship. And now for the runners-up Cup trucks. First off, Venom. Venom had a strong finish near the end of the year. Remember, it won freestyle for the first time ever in Daytona, and it was second place, technically actually third place in Detroit. It could have won freestyle again in Detroit, but fell short, just missing out on the championship. That was close. But the biggest devastating blow, of course, is Crush and Run. The former racing champion had a horrible year in racing. For the first time ever, it had a losing record, and it did not do as well in freestyle, even though it's not a really good freestyler. Its racing record was so poor, it kept losing the trucks it needed to win and beat, kind of like Eruption last year. And all that. Like, nothing went its way. And because of that, Crush and Run missing the championship for the first time ever. God, this is the first time ever, I think, a former racing champion missed the championship. Because remember, historically, the racing champion had the best chances of making it. With the point stands and all that. Not this time. This is also, I think, I think it's only the second time ever a champion has missed the championship, along with Mad Dog in 2011. Terrible year for Crush and Run, unfortunately. Stinger. Oh boy. Stinger, I bet, is mad that I didn't add Orlando in the schedule. Because remember, Shatter won racing Orlando the last 2 years. And if it had Orlando in one racing, it would have made it. But not enough. as it didn't do as well in racing or freestyle this year after 2 years in a row making it to the championship. Madness was all over the place. I think it might have won racing somewhere, but it just didn't do enough. Fell short despite the strong finish it had in Detroit. Predator, oh my god, Predator had probably the worst racing record I've ever seen. 2-12, and remember, its 2 wins were in Kansas City. It got its 2 wins in 1 place. But it was pretty damn good in freestyle, but its racing record was so poor that it cost it. Terrible year for Predator. And funny enough, Predator is the only Fountain truck to not make the championship. The only one. And War Machine was consistent in racing, but consistent freestyle, but terrible in racing. Daisy Chain almost won freestyle several times. Couldn't get the job done, though, as it missed out. Reckless Intent, the only reason its racing record looks somewhat good, it probably has one of the best racing records of the truck that missed the championship, is because it did so well in New Orleans. Remember, it made the finals for the first time ever in New Orleans, but just missed out to Outlaw and all that. Not really much for freestyle. High Flying has the most losses, I think, of any truck this year with 14 because of the Arena Tour. So, yeah, only won 30% of its races. Not really good freestyle, even though it would consistently do a whole bunch of incredible stuff. Total Chaos, again, regressed this year. It has, like, one of the worst freestyle points total, because nothing went its way this year in freestyle. It did better in racing, which is wild, because it's been a really good freestyle the last few years. Bone Crusher had a terrible year and missing out from the championship. Remember, last year it won race in Vegas. It didn't do anything this year. It didn't do anything in racing. It won its first ever freestyle, though, in Salt Lake City, which was amazing. Crusher just fell short, even though it had probably one of its best seasons ever. Topsy Turvy had a really good performance, I think, in one of the events. There was one stretch where it was like 4-2 in racing, like 80% of its wins were from 2 events, but it just didn't do enough to get in. Night Stalker won freestyle in Reno, its first ever freestyle win, but that was it. Nothing else to say. Damage Control, it won its first ever race in Salt Lake City, but it wasn't enough in the end, as it had a lot of struggles here at freestyle especially. And last place, Locomotion, the fan favorite, just not the good season it had. Alright, so of course, that's how the regular season ended. What a year it was for 2024. But of course, we're not over yet, as we got the 2024 MTWS Runners-Up Cup, which of course will be on January 25th, and then the championship on February 1st. I cannot wait for that, so I hope you all enjoy, and see you all then for the Runners-Up Cup and Championship. And what a year the 2024 MTWS season was.